The rise of the Ottoman Empire, beginning in the late 13th century, a significant period in world history, as the Ottoman Turks established themselves as a dominant power, not only in Southeast Europe, but Western Asia and North Africa. Founded by Osman I, the leader of a Turkoman tribal group in Anatolia, the empire expanded rapidly under his leadership and that of his successors. Key victories, such as the Battle of Kosovo in 1389 and the Conquest of Constantinople in 1453, were instrumental in establishing the Ottomans as a major threat to the European powers. Hello and welcome to the channel. If it's your first time here, it's good to meet you. And if you're coming back, it's good to see you again. As always, if you like what I do and wish to support the channel, Patreon link is in the description. Otherwise, help me meet my 10,000 subscriber goal by liking and subscribing if you feel inclined to do so. Now, without further ado, please make yourself relaxed as we begin our history of the rise of the Ottoman Empire. This video will go from the early days of Ottoman history, as it is defined at least, to the conquest of Constantinople. The victory at Constantinople will be our end point for this video. So, with that in mind, let's begin. After the Battle of Manzikert in 1071, the region of Anatolia was split between the Byzantine Empire in the west and the Anatolian Seljuks in the central plateau. The Mongol invasion post-1243 Battle of Kosovo and the Byzantine Palaiologos dynasty's reconquest of Constantinople in 1261, however, disrupted this delicate balance. The Mongol presence in the region drove nomadic Turkish tribes westward into less defended Byzantine territories, heralding 2 centuries of Mongol suzerainty in Anatolia, evidenced from Ilkhanate rulers depicted on the coinage minted during this era. From the 1260s onwards, the politics of Anatolia began to shift decisively, as Turkish Anatolian beyliks emerged, filling the vacuum left by the retreating Byzantine and fragmenting Seljuk powers. By the end of the 13th century, Western Anatolia was a mosaic of fragmented authority, comprising local rulers, tribal groups, holy figures, and warlords, while Byzantine and Seljuk influence continued to wane. Historians often liken these political entities in the 13th and 14th century Anatolia to the taifas of late medieval Muslim Spain, indicating their similarly fractured nature. The prevailing conditions made Western Anatolia ripe for raiding, attracting warriors who pledged allegiance fluidly, driven by prospects of plunder and glory. In this chaotic landscape, the Ottoman dynasty, named after its first ruler, Osman I, emerged. Osman I is traditionally considered to be descended from a Turkic tribe that migrated from Central Asia during the Mongol conquests. The early history of Osman and the foundation of his beylik around the town of Sogut in northwestern Anatolia are shrouded in conflicting accounts and also a good dose of mythology, with no contemporary sources found to this date that give us any clarity. By the late 13th century, Osman had established himself as a formidable leader, marking a break from the past 2 centuries by minting coins in his own name, rather than in the name of their Mongol Ilkhanate overlords. Osman's principality initially relied on support of nomadic Turkish groups, engaging in raids against the Byzantine territories in the region. The Ottoman tribe was politically inclusive and open to all who would join. Thus, they integrated individuals of Byzantine and other origins. If you had the skills, you were in. This inclusivity extended to notable families, such as that of Kosmial, of Greek Christian descent, and the family of Ranislav, which was Bulgarian. From its very inception, the Ottoman enterprise was characterized by a melding of Islamic and Persian cultural elements, exemplified by a land grant from Osman's son Orhan in 1324, a land grant that proclaimed him as, and I quote, a champion of the faith. And the word champion, of course, in these contexts is not used lightly. In the early stages of the Ottoman Empire, before the establishment of a centralized government in the mid-15th century, the rulers relied significantly on coalitions and alliances with various power holders within the empire. This included Turkic tribal leaders and Balkan allies and vassals, whose support was crucial for maintaining authority. The Ottoman polity, under the leadership of Osman I at the end of the 13th century, initially functioned with a tribal structure and lacked a complex administrative system. As the empire expanded, the challenge of governing a growing population necessitated a more structured approach. Drawing from the administrative practices of the Seljuks of Rum and the military strategies of the Ilkhanates, by 1324 the Ottomans were producing bureaucratic documents in Persian, albeit in the Seljuk style. The expansion of early Ottoman state was driven by the military efforts of the Ghazi, or the frontier warriors. Initially, the Ottoman ruler was merely the first among equals among these warriors. The centralization of the state often occurred in opposition to the interests of the Ghazi, who resisted efforts to bring them under central control. Well, over time, however, the Ottomans did succeed in subordinating these warriors, harnessing their military power to the benefit of the state. An aspect of early Ottoman governance that endeared them to their subjects was the relatively low tax rates. That's one way to get people on board. This not only reflected an ideological commitment to the well-being of their people, but it also served a pragmatic purpose, that being securing the loyalty of newly conquered populations. As the empire became more centralized in the 15th century, however, the tax burden increased, which of course led to quite a lot of criticism from contemporary writers. Nobody likes paying taxes, right? Well, a critical element of Ottoman success was also the preservation of the empire under a single heir across generations, contrasting with other Turkic groups that typically divided their territories among the sons of a deceased ruler. It was this practice that helped them maintain the continuity and unity of the empire. State centralization and institutional developments. The centralization process in the Ottoman Empire was significantly influenced by the influx of Muslim scholars from central Anatolia, where a more urban and bureaucratic civilization had developed under the Seljuks of Rum. The Kandarli family, supplying several grand viziers, played a pivotal role in shaping these early Ottoman institutions. For instance, Kara Halil Kandarli, a notable member of this family, encouraged Murad I to implement the penchik tax on war captives, which of course funded the creation of the Janissaries, a personal army loyal only to the Ottoman Sultan. Murad also established the role of military judge, Kazasker in their tongue, and appointed specific frontier warriors known as Lords of the Frontier, signaling a shift away from the earlier egalitarian leadership style. He was indeed the first Ottoman ruler to adopt the title of Sultan, marking a clear departure from his role as merely first among equals. Now, he was just first. The Ottomans began conducting regular cadastral surveys around the 1430s, which organized the distribution of agricultural taxation rights among the Timariots. These cavalrymen, who could be of diverse origins, including converted Byzantine aristocrats, collected revenue in exchange for military service. Symbolically, the willingness of the Ottoman rulers to stand upon hearing martial music underscored their readiness to participate in Gaza. However, Mehmed II discontinued this practice following the conquest of Constantinople in 1453. He was a bit different. His status was not just of a frontier warrior, but as a sovereign of an expansive empire. Of course, if you want to know all about Mehmed, you can watch my full video on him, or just keep watching this one. We'll get to him eventually. Well, at the onset of the 14th century, Osman I's army was primarily composed of mounted warriors, who admittedly excelled quite well in raiding tactics, such as ambushes and hit-and-run attacks, effectively allowing Osman to exert control over the countryside of Bithynia. Initially, Osman's forces lacked the capability to conduct formal sieges. The first significant town to fall to the Ottomans, Bursa, was taken not by force, but through a protracted blockade that led to its surrender due to starvation. It was during the reign of Osman's successors, Orhan and Murad, that the Ottomans honed their siege techniques, marking a significant evolution in their military capabilities. The composition of Osman's early forces was very diverse. The warriors, known as Ghazis and Akinsis, or raiders, were drawn to Osman's burgeoning success, motivated by prospects of plunder and glory. While many were Muslim Turks of tribal origin, the ranks also included those of Byzantine background, whether they be Christians or recent converts to Islam. By the late 14th century, the Ottomans began to incorporate gunpowder weapons into their arsenal, a very new innovation. It was a transformative development in their military strategy. By the 1420s, cannons were routinely deployed in sieges, significantly enhancing their offensive capabilities. These advancements extended to defensive measures as well, with cannons used to fortify strongholds and to secure strategic coastal positions, such as the use of shore batteries to overcome a Crusader blockade of the Dardanelles in 1444. During this period, handheld firearms were also introduced and adopted by some janissaries, signaling a broader shift towards a more advanced weaponry in the Ottoman military doctrine. Parallel to their military advancements, the early 15th century saw significant cultural and intellectual enrichment within the Ottoman court. The court became a patron of literary arts, continuing the rich literary traditions of other Islamic courts across the region. The earliest surviving written account of Ottoman history was penned by the poet Ahmedi, intended originally for Sultan Bayazid I, but completed for his son Suleiman Celebi after Bayezid's death in the year 1402. This work, titled the Book of Alexander, falls within the Mirror of Princes genre, which aimed to counsel rulers on statecraft. Ahmedi's narrative served not only as a historical recounting, but as a subtle critique of contemporary leadership, particularly targeting Bayezid's policies, including his military campaigns against other Muslim entities in Anatolia. Through his political portrayal of Osman and his early successors, Ahmedi emphasized their commitment to jihad against the Christian states of the Balkans, implicitly criticizing Bayezid's departure from these ideals. Osman I, the founder of the Ottoman Empire, remains a very important figure in history, but also quite mysterious due to the scant details available about his early life and career. He's frequently cited as beginning his reign in 1299. This date is more symbolic than historically verifiable, and doesn't really align with any specific event. No one battle or end of anybody else's reign, it's just there. Well, by 1300, Osman had risen to lead a group of Turkish pastoral tribes, establishing a modest dominion around the town of Sogut in northwestern Anatolia, in the region of Bithynia. His leadership was marked by frequent and effective raids against the neighboring Byzantine territories, which enhanced his reputation and also attracted a great following of warriors, particularly after the victory at the Battle of Bephaeus around 1302. During his lifetime, Osman's military activities were primarily consisted of raiding, and it took the Ottomans a while to perfect their siege techniques. Thus, his engagements were not limited to the Byzantines, but he also clashed with Tatar groups and the nearby Principality of Germian, which we will get back to. Thus, his ability to forge political and commercial ties with various groups, both Muslim and Christian, was crucial to setting the foundation for the early steps of the Ottoman Empire. Notable among his allies was Kosei Mihal, a Christian Greek village headman who had converted to Islam. His descendants became prominent figures among the frontier warriors in the Ottoman service. Osman also secured his position by marrying the daughter of Sheikh Edebali, a respected local religious leader, which helped to consolidate his authority. Ottoman chronicles later romanticized this union, portraying Osman as having a prophetic dream, predicting the vast empire his descendants would rule one day, a narrative that seems to be crafted later on to enhance his dynastic legitimacy. Following Osman's death, his son Orhan succeeded him and significantly expanded Ottoman control in the Bithynia region. Orhan's reign saw the capture of major towns like Bursa in 1326, which became a key administrative and cultural center. By this time, the Ottomans were adopting Seljuk bureaucratic practices, minting their own coins, and employing siege warfare techniques at an ever more advanced pace. Orhan's era marked a critical evolution in the Ottoman administrative and military apparatus. He also focused on expanding Ottoman influence across the Dardanelles into Europe. His marriage to Theodora, the daughter of a Byzantine prince John VI Cantacuzenes, and his alliance with John VI against Emperor John V Palaiologos, facilitated Ottoman ventures into Europe. The capture of Chimpe Castle in 1354 provided a strategic foothold in Gallipoli, enabling further military campaigns into Thrace and the Balkans. These conquests not only extended Ottoman territory, but also strategically isolated Byzantium from potential European allies by controlling key overland routes. Orhan's policies and military campaigns significantly bolstered the Ottoman prestige and set the stage for further expansions under his successors, solidifying the empire's power base both in the Balkans and Anatolia. The period following Orhan was preceded by Murad, and after Murad's conquest of Adrianople, at the time named Edirne, in 1362 marked a significant strategic shift for the Ottomans, signifying a more pronounced intention to expand into southeast Europe. By making Edirne his capital a year later, Murad underscored the Ottomans' resolve to establish a lasting peace and presence in Europe, albeit under their control. This move, of course, alarmed the neighboring Christian states, being Byzantium, Bulgaria, and Serbia, which were already having enough trouble dealing with their own internal challenges and external threats. For Byzantium, the Ottoman establishment in Thrace exacerbated already precarious situation. The empire itself was significantly diminished at this time, with its territories mainly confined to Constantinople and its immediate surroundings, Thessaloniki, and the Despotate of Morea. This geographical fragmentation made cohesive defense efforts very difficult, heavily reliant on maritime links maintained by Venice and Genoa to keep these territories connected. Thus, the weakened state of Byzantium, compounded by frequent civil conflicts, rendered any unified resistance to the Ottomans 90 to 99% impossible. It was just far too difficult. Thus, the survival of Constantinople heavily depended on its formidable defensive walls, known as the Theodosian Walls, and well known indeed as some of the toughest defenses at the time. They were very thick, and they were all around Constantinople, some areas doubled up just in case. Well, at this time, there was an absence of a significant Ottoman naval force, and the continued observance of treaties allowed the city to be provisioned. So as long as the Ottomans weren't going to build up their navy and block up the Bosphorus, Constantinople will be okay. Somewhat of a foreshadowing, right? In Bulgaria, Tsar Ivan Alexander's decision to divide his realm among his sons toward the end of his rule precipitated the fragmentation of Bulgarian authority. The seizure of the Vidin province by Hungarian forces in 1365 further destabilized the region. Although Bulgaria managed to temporarily repulse the Hungarians and restore Ivan Stratsimir to the throne in Vidin, the internal divisions persisted on. Ivan Stratsimir declared himself ruler of an independent empire of Vidin, though it was pretty small, you couldn't really use the word empire, while another region, Dobruja, gained de facto independence under Dobrodica. These events diverted Bulgarian efforts and resources away from the growing threat posed by the Ottomans. Now on to Serbia. Their own disintegration following Tsar Stefan Dušan's death in 1355 also dramatically altered the balance of power in the Balkans. His son, Stefan Uros V, proved incapable of maintaining the cohesion and authority his father had commanded. The resultant power vacuum led to the rise of independent principalities and heightened regional fragmentation. Significant territories, including Thessaly, Epirus, and former Albanian holdings, slipped from central control. Thus, the Serbian nobility, divided and preoccupied with their own internal conflicts, didn't have time to mount a unified defense against external threats, and that, of course, included the advancing Ottomans. By 1370, Murad had solidified Ottoman control over most of the region of Thrace, positioning him to directly confront the fragmented Bulgarian and Serbian regions. In 1371, the Serbian ruler Uglesa attempted to form an anti-Ottoman alliance encompassing the three major Balkan states, but the effort failed. Byzantium, focused on its survival and reliant on its own food supplies, opted out. Following the death of Ivan Alexander, Bulgaria was too divided to commit such an alliance, with Ivan Shishman and Ivan Stratsimir preoccupied with their own realms and subsequently their own problems. Most regional Serb nobles, including those who recognized the Ottoman threat, were reluctant to engage, fearing attacks on their domains during their absence. The Battle of Maritza in 1371 near Chernomon was a pivotal moment for the Ottoman Empire's expansion into Europe. Sultan Murad's lieutenant, Lala Shahin Pasha, led a much smaller Ottoman force in a night raid against the Serbian forces, numbering around 70,000, under King Vukasin and his brother despot Uglesa. Despite their numerical superiority, the Serbian army was decisively defeated, leading to the deaths of both Serbian leaders and significant territorial gains for the Ottomans in Macedonia and parts of Greece. This overwhelming victory, often referred to by the Turks as the rout of the Serbs, marked a critical shift in the regional power dynamic, and it's probably best to not mention it around any Serbian people. It's a bad memory. Well, following this catastrophic defeat at Maritza, what little unity Serbia had was completely gone. By the end of the year, Uros, the last of the Nemanjic dynasty, died, leading to the disintegration of central authority in Serbia. Large areas of central Serbia declared independence, forming their own principalities and reducing Serbia to half of its former size. No future ruler would again hold the title of Tsar, and regional provinces proliferated, accelerating the fragmentation and internal conflicts within Serbia. King Vukasin's son, Marko, survived the battle and proclaimed himself king, but his authority was limited to his lands around Prilep in central Macedonia. In the wake of the Battle of Ormenion, Ottoman raids into Serbia and Bulgaria intensified, pressing regional powers further. The sheer enormity of the Ottoman victory and the ongoing raids convinced the Bulgarian Tsar Shishman of the necessity to come to terms with the Ottomans. They weren't going anywhere. They were here to stay. So, by 1376, Shishman accepted vassal status under Murad, and even sent his sister to join the Sultan's harem at Edirne, worst brother ever. Although this did not stop the Ottoman raiders from continuing their incursions into Bulgarian territory. Around the same time, Byzantine Emperor John V also accepted Ottoman vassalage, which opened the door for Murad's direct interference in Byzantine domestic politics. And interfere they did. Despite the dire situation, the Balkans experienced a brief respite during the 1370s and into the 1380s, as Murad's focus shifted towards Anatolia, and they concentrated on meddling in Byzantium's political affairs. This lull allowed the Serbian prince Lazar, with support from powerful Bulgarian and Montenegrin nobles, along with the backing of the Serbian Orthodox Patriarch, to consolidate control over much of the core Serbian lands. Most regional rulers in Macedonia, including Marko, accepted vassalage under Murad to preserve their positions, and often led Serb forces in the Sultan's campaigns in Anatolia. By the mid-1380s, Murad's attention returned to the Balkans. In 1385, he captured Sofia, the last Bulgarian stronghold of the south of the Balkan Mountains, which opened the way towards Nis, a strategic point at the northern terminus of the vital Vardar-Morava highway. The same year, the Battle of Savra saw Ottoman forces defeat Serbian and Albanian lords, many of whom became vassals. Well, in 1386, Murad finally captured Nis, and he likely forced Lazar of Serbia to accept Ottoman vassalage. As Murad pushed deeper into the north-central Balkans, he also extended his reach west along the Via Egnatia into Macedonia, imposing vassal status on regional rulers there too. When Murad was drawn back to Anatolia in 1387, his Serbian and Bulgarian vassals attempted to sever their ties with him. However, Lazar formed a coalition with Dirko of Bosnia and Stratzimir of Vidin, and achieved a significant victory against the Ottomans at the Battle of Bloknik, encouraging other regional leaders like Shishman to reassert their independence too. By 1388, Murad returned, and he was not happy. He swiftly subdued the Bulgarian rulers, forcing them back into vassalage. Get back under the boot. Confident from his victory at Plosnik, Lazar refused the Ottoman demands in 1389, leading to the iconic Battle of Kosovo, where both armies suffered tremendous losses. And these losses included both the lives of Lazar and Murad. Neither one of the commanders made it through the battle. Well, although this battle did not stop the Ottoman advance, it did significantly delay it, leaving the Serbs too weakened to defend their lands effectively, leading eventually to the vassalage or conquest of the remaining Serbian principalities. Which leads us to Bayazid I, known as the Thunderbolt for the rapid expansion of his empire, succeeded to the sultanship after the assassination of his father Murad I. In response to the attack, Bayazid ordered the execution of all Serbian captives, no exceptions, solidifying his fierce reputation. His reign was marked by a period of intense military activity and territorial expansion into the Balkans. Bayazid quickly continued Ottoman incursions into the Balkans, raiding Serbia and southern Albania, and compelling most of the local princes to accept vassalage. He also strategically settled large numbers of eunuchs along the Vardar River in Macedonia to secure the southern stretch of the Vardar-Morava Highway and establish a firm base for westward expansion to the Adriatic coasts. The presence of Turk raiders at Hungary's southern borders spurred Hungarian King Sigismund of Luxembourg to recognize the Ottoman threat. By early 1393, Sigismund sought allies among the Balkan states for a new anti-Ottoman coalition. Meanwhile, Ivan Shishman of Bulgaria, burdened by his vassalage to the Ottomans, was in secret negotiations with Sigismund and other regional leaders like Wallachian voivode Mircea the Old. However, Bayazid discovered these negotiations, and he was not impressed. Thus he launched a devastating campaign against Shishman, capturing Turnovo after a lengthy siege and executing Shishman following the fall of Nikopol. All of Shishman's lands were thusly annexed, and his brother Sratsimir was forced to reaffirm his vassalage. Better luck next time, I suppose. Bayezid's attention then turned south to Thessaly and the Morea, whose Greek lords were already vassals but were embroiled in their own internal conflicts. In 1394, Bayezid summoned a meeting at Ceres with all his Balkan vassals, including the Byzantine Emperor Manuel II Palaeologos and Serbian Prince Lazarevic, to resolve these disputes and reaffirm their vassal status. When the Mauryan lords later reneged on their agreement, Bayezid blockaded Manuel II in Constantinople and annexed Thessaly after marching southward for good measure. While Bayezid was focused on Greece, Mircea of Wallachia conducted raids into Ottoman territory. In retaliation, Bayezid's forces, including Serb troops led by Lazarevic, invaded Wallachia in 1395, but were defeated at Rovine. Well, despite this setback, Bayazid annexed Dobruja and placed a pretender on the Wallachian throne, leading to 2 years of civil strife in Wallachia. In 1396, the Hungarian king Sigismund organized a crusade against the Ottomans. The Crusader army, lacking cohesion and plagued by the impulsive actions of French knights, suffered a crushing defeat at Nikopol. The defeat allowed Bayazid to take control of Vidin and effectively end Bulgaria as an independent state. Following Nikopol, Bayazid conducted raids into Hungary, Wallachia, and Bosnia, and brought most of Albania under Ottoman control. He also commenced a siege of Constantinople, which was lifted in 1397 after Bayazid agreed to confirm future Byzantine emperors as a condition of their vassalage. Bayazid's campaigns were interrupted, however, by problems in Anatolia, where he faced a threat from Timur Lenk. In 1402, the two rulers' forces clashed at the Battle of Ankara, where the Ottomans were defeated, and Bayazid was captured. He later died in captivity. This defeat led to a civil war among Bayazid's sons. This period was known as the Ottoman interregnum, which temporarily halted Ottoman expansion into the Balkans. Thus, it was this defeat at Ankara in 1402 that plunged the Ottoman Empire into a period of chaos. And it was during this time that Bayazid's sons, Suleiman Çelebi, Isa Çelebi, Mehmed Çelebi, and Musa Çelebi, engaged in bitter succession conflicts. A tale as old as time, I'm afraid. This internal strife, though, allowed for a brief resurgence of semi-independence among the vassal Christian Balkan states. Suleiman, based in Edirne, initially declared himself ruler, but faced non-recognition from his brothers. He then sought alliances with Byzantium and Venice in 1403, regaining Thessaloniki in the process. However, his reportedly overbearing nature eventually alienated his Balkan vassals, leading to his defeat and death at the hands of his brother Musa in 1410. Musa then gained the support of key Balkan and Byzantine leaders, consolidating power in the Ottoman Balkans. Musa's rule was marked by efforts to strengthen his position through popular support, which involved favoring lower social elements, alienating the Islamic bureaucratic and commercial classes. This discontent led to these classes, along with the Balkan Christian vassal rulers, to support Mehmed, who invaded the Balkans in 1412, captured key cities like Sofia and Nis, and decisively defeated Musa in 1413 near Sofia. Upon his victory, Mehmed Çelebi crowned himself as Mehmed I in Edirne, taking on the monumental task of restoring the empire's former glory. Despite Timur's death in 1405, the Mongols continued to pose a threat in the east, and many Balkan kingdoms had regained or were nearing full independence. Mehmed relocated the capital from Bursa back to Adrianople, and embarked on a diplomatic approach to reaffirm Ottoman authority in the Balkans, where many regions, including Bosnia, Moldavia, and Albania, maintained significant autonomy. and we couldn't have that. Mehmed's reigns are a blend of military action and also diplomacy, managing to bring back Albania to Ottoman control and formalizing Ottoman vassalage over Bosnian king Ban Tirko II Kotromanic. Mehmed also faced significant domestic challenges, notably the 1416 popular revolt in Dobruja, led by the scholar mystic Sey Bedreddin, and supported by Mircea I of Wallachia. Bedreddin's radical ideas threatened the social order, but Mehmed swiftly suppressed the uprising, reasserting control over Dobruja by 1419 and reaffirming Wallachia's vassal status. Mehmed spent his later years reorganizing the state structures that were disrupted by the interregnum, ensuring a more stable succession for his son, Murad II, who ascended the throne in 1421. Murad's early reign was dominated by dealing with internal revolts and external threats, including laying siege to Constantinople in 1422. After the siege was lifted, it forced the Byzantine Emperor, Manuel II Palaiologos, to agree to pay increased tribute. Murad's military campaigns continued on, with the siege of Thessalonica beginning in 1422 and lasting until the city's capture in 1430. The intricate dynamic and conflicts in the Balkans during Murad's reign were marked by a series of military engagements involving the Ottomans, Venice, and various other Christian states. The tension escalated when Venetian troops took control of Thessaloniki, which was under siege by the Ottomans, who were completely unaware of the change in control, leading to the accidental killing of Venetian soldiers by Ottoman forces. Well, accident or not, you cannot bring them back to life, can't you? Thus, this misunderstanding resulted in Venice declaring a full-on war to the Ottoman Empire. While Murad II, seeking to assert Ottoman control, responded by besieging Constantinople and Thessaloniki. Despite the initial Ottoman successes in storming Thessaloniki, the Venetian fleet managed to repel the Ottomans by bombarding them from the sea. This setback at Thessaloniki encouraged Serbia and Hungary to ally with Venice, and Pope Martin V called for a broader Christian participation in the conflict against the Ottomans, though the only nation to actually send troops was Austria. So, as the war in the Balkans expanded, the Ottomans aimed to recapture Wallachia, which had become a Hungarian vassal state. Concurrently, Murad faced attacks from the Karamanid Emirate in Anatolia, and also from Serbian forces in Bulgaria, which stretched his military resources. Hungarian forces engaged the Ottomans in Wallachia, and then moved south into Bulgaria, where they were joined with Serbian forces. However, the Hungarians retreated back into Wallachia, allowing Murad to consolidate his defenses against Serbia and Hungary, without immediately having to retake Wallachia. So the pressure was off somewhat, at least for now. The Ottomans, in 1430, launched a surprise naval attack on Thessaloniki, which eventually led to the city's capture by 1432 under a peace treaty with Venice. This treaty also marked a cessation of hostilities that had involved Serbia and Hungary, but the conflict resumed in 1441, when several powers, including Poland and the Holy Roman Empire, intervened against the Ottomans. Nis and Sofia were quickly captured by Christian forces in 1443, and a significant defeat at the Battle of Jalawaz in 1444 forced Murad to abdicate in favor of his son, Mehmed. However, later that year the Christians breached a peace treaty, and it led to renewed warfare. While the Battle of Varna in 1444 saw Murad reinstated as Sultan after a decisive victory against a Polish-Hungarian army led by Władysław III of Poland and commanded by Janos Hunyadi. Despite his initial abdication, Murad returned to power and secured another peace treaty in 1448, granting the Ottoman Empire control over Wallachia, Bulgaria, and part of Albania. The final years of Murad saw continued military efforts, including defeating Timur-Lenk's son Shah Rukh and various Anatolian emirates. He also faced John Hunyadi in the Battle of Kosovo of 1448, which aimed to exploit the presumed vulnerability of the Ottomans following the Battle of Varna. Murad died in the winter of 1450 to 1451, possibly from wounds sustained in skirmishes with Albanian guerrillas led by Skanderberg. It was his death that marked the end of a chaotic but ultimately successful period of consolidation and expansion for the Ottoman Empire in the Balkans. Okay, we're finally there. Mehmed II, known as Fatih or the Conqueror, ascended to the Ottoman throne following the death of his father Murad II in 1451. His immediate actions demonstrated his capabilities as both a military leader and a politician. He swiftly consolidated his power by annexing the Karamanid Emirate and renewing peace treaties with both Hungary and Venice, ensuring a stability on the empire's western frontier. Determined to reinforce his rule and secure his legacy, Mehmed set his sights on Constantinople, recognizing its strategic and symbolic significance. The city was not only a vital trade hub between Europe and Asia, but also a legendary capital, whose conquest would position Mehmed as a formidable leader recognized across both the Christian and Muslim worlds. Thus, the fall of Constantinople could potentially eliminate it as a strong staging ground for his Christian adversaries, and significantly enhance his imperial stature. Thus, from 1451 to 1453, Mehmed prepared meticulously for the siege. He constructed a fortress on the European side of the Bosphorus to cut off aid to the city from the Black Sea, developed a navy to control access by the sea, and amassed a large arsenal of cannons, including those crafted by the Hungarian engineer Urban, which, funnily enough, he had offered his services to the Constantinopolians, perhaps we'll call them that, but they could not afford him. So he went to the next highest bidder. Well, Mehmed's preparations also included diplomatic maneuvers, such as the securing of a trade agreement with Venice that neutralized potential Venetian intervention, which was a very smart move, because if anybody was going to intervene in terms of a naval assault, it was either going to be Genoa or Venice. Now, in April of 1453, Mehmed finally laid siege to Constantinople. Despite a determined resistance led by Emperor Constantine XI and Giovanni Giustiniani, the city's defences gradually eroded under the relentless Ottoman artillery barrage. On the 29th of May, 1453, Mehmed launched his final assault, leading to a breach of the walls after a fiercely contested battle. The conquest marked the end of the Byzantine Empire and established Constantinople as a new strategic center of the Ottoman Empire. Mehmed moved the Ottoman capital from Adrianople to Constantinople and began an extensive project to revitalize the city. He named it Istanbul, symbolizing a new era in Ottoman rule and transforming it into an economic and cultural hub. Mehmed encouraged the migration of artisans, craftsmen, and traders from all across the empire to repopulate and enrich the city, which had, until that point, suffered from quite a lot of population decline and general neglect, especially since the Fourth Crusade, but we don't talk about that. Well, we do actually. I did a whole video on it if you want to look at that, but whichever. Well, Mehmed then assumed the title Kaiser I Rum, seeing himself as the successor to Roman emperors. And then he aimed to restore the grandeur of the city to match its illustrious past. Under his rule, the Hagia Sophia was converted into a mosque, symbolizing the city's transformation into an Islamic imperial capital. And I'm sorry that I didn't provide a trigger warning before that one. I know that this upsets more than a few people. Well, following the conquest, Mehmed continued to strengthen his empire, building the Topkapi Palace in 1462 as the new administrative center, and further solidifying his control over the Balkans and Anatolia. His ambitions extended beyond Constantinople, however, as he envisioned the reunification of the Roman Empire, but this time under his leadership, which led him to campaign as far as Otranto in pursuit of capturing Rome itself. Well, the fall of Constantinople didn't just mark a pivotal shift in the balance of power between Christendom and the Islamic world, but it certainly cemented the place of the Ottoman Empire as a major power in both the Mediterranean and European realms. This event reshaped global trade routes, set the stage for the Age of Discovery, and it had a lasting impact on the history of Europe and the Middle East alike. Thus, the fall of Constantinople, whether you refer to it as the defeat or the victory, for both sides, it's a big moment in our history, albeit for very different reasons. Well, thank you very much for listening to, I guess it's part 1 of the history about the Ottomans. The rise of the Ottoman Empire. Ooh, scary stuff. Very spooky. Well, I would like to thank my top-tier patrons. Very fine people, that being Susan, Jeffrey, JC, and Stark Factory. Well, thank you very much, and if you'd like to support the channel, then you know exactly where to go. Take a look in that description and follow the breadcrumbs. But until next time, thank you very much for listening. It's once again been a pleasure, as it always is. Good night, and Sweet dreams to you all.